Is it working? Okay. Sorry everyone, if you were on the Kahoot, you were dropped out, so please log back in using the details up there on the screen. For those in YouTube land, it is www.kahoot.it, www. Huh? No YouTube live? Oh, well, never mind. Sorry, people in YouTube, and you watch it later. You can't play, but everyone here, you've got the screen, www.kahoot.it, and it's 317-312, 317-312. So just while you're logging in, a couple of things. If I am speeding up or if I'm going too fast, just put your hand up and say, oi, slow down. Happy for you to do that. If I make a factual mistake, again, please correct me. And if my Arabic pronunciation is wrong, again, correct me, because that will probably be the case as we do the Seerah. So apologies in advance, but feel free to correct me. Has everyone joined? Did you join? Don't put an alias so no one knows. Okay. People are teaming up because they're cowards. Come on, be brave, log in. Okay, everyone ready? We're going to start. Bismillah. So, 3, 2, 1. Which surah sparked the spreading of the message of Islam more publicly? Surah Shura, Surah Al-Mu'minun, Surah Al-Duhqa, and Surah Al-Ikhlas. Which one gave the instruction to start spreading Islam publicly, so more than the family? Surah Shura, yes. So 2 wrong, 2 correct, 1 wrong, 2 wrong, and then 1 wrong again. So hopefully you'll pick up soon. What happened to Jamil, Abu Lahab's wife? She couldn't walk. Her hand stopped working. She couldn't see the Prophet. She couldn't hear the Prophet. Jamil, Abu Lahab's wife. Which one was it? She couldn't see the Prophet. Yes, remember, she came to yell at the Prophet and found Abu Bakr and started saying, where is the Mudhaman? Mudhaman means the belittled one. And Abu Bakr was shocked. And then as she stormed off, Abu Bakr turns to the Prophet and says, didn't she see you? And she couldn't see that the Prophet was sitting right next to Abu Bakr. Question 3. What did Abu Lahab do after Surah Lahab? Plan to kill the Prophet, plan to boycott the Muslims, plan to disown the Prophet, plan to break the engagement. Surah Lahab was revealed in regards to Abu Lahab, and Abu Lahab and his wife decided to do something. What was that thing they decided to do? Plan to break the engagement. Remember, Abu Lahab and his wife's sons, 2 sons were engaged to Ruqayya and Zainab, and they broke that off. And that action was actually the first action taken personally against the Prophet and his family. Prophet's famous saying, if they should put the question mark in my right hand and the moon in my question mark, what are the 2 question marks? If they should put what in my right hand and put the moon in what? They should put the what in my right hand and the moon in my what? They should put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left hand. Oh dear. So most people said moon in my right hand and moon in my right hand. No, yeah, so that doesn't really make sense. Okay. Next question. Makapa, I don't know who you are. Makapaka. I haven't seen that name before, but you're doing well, whoever you are. Surah Nuh was revealed to encourage the Muslims to spread Islam. Remind the Muslims to be good. Remind the Muslims that others have gone through what they are going through. Remind Muslims to fear Allah. Surah Nuh. was revealed to do what to the Muslims? Remind Muslims that others have gone, that's right. So Surah Nuh was in regards to the Prophet Nuh and his ummah and how they struggled, and to remind the Prophet and his community that they weren't the first to go through what they're suffering through. Which surah reprimanded the Prophet? Surah Absa, Surah Muzammil, Surah Duha, Surah Ikhlas. This is one of the stories I really liked. Surah Absa, 3 got it right. This is the one where the Prophet ﷺ was talking to the chieftain of the Makhzum clan, and the blind Sahaba, Abdullah, forgot his other pit, came and he looked away, and the surah was revealed. It's interesting, I don't know if I told you last week, but the surah was revealed. When surahs are revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, it comes in different forms. Sometimes it comes like a ringing bell, sometimes he hears it as a voice, sometimes it comes so heavy that the camel he's riding on collapses. And even Zayd once narrates that his leg, the Prophet's leg was on Zayd's leg when revelation came, and Zayd thought that his thigh was about to snap. It was so heavy. This particular one actually came with an intense headache to the Prophet. So with the reprimand, there was also a physical reaction to him as well. Surah Al-Mu'minun, Surah Duha, and Surah Yunus, what common theme did they have? So the quiz mainly is about the Quran this time. What common theme? Peace, reflection on the universe, reflection on oneself, or submission? Now you didn't need to be here for the Seerah. If you know your surahs, you might know the answer to this as well. Reflection on oneself. Remember, these surahs, the early surahs, were being revealed to change society. It wasn't just to replace one religion with another. And the first step of changing society was to change oneself. Which Sahaba drew the first blood? Abu Bakr, Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, Umar, or Saad ibn Abi Waqqas? And I don't like this spinning circle, probably means the internet might have dropped out, but let's see. Remember the story where the Muslims were praying in the desert and a group of Meccans came and started picking a fight with them, and one of the Sahaba found a sheep's jaw bone and swung it. It was Saad ibn Abi Waqqas. That was the first blood that was drawn in relation to Islam. If you guys have watched the Omar series, it's called the Omar series, and it was done by I feel like saying the Qatari government, I'm not sure. It's a very good series, very, very good series. I recommend it. If you haven't watched it, watch it. What other 2 locations do we have historical evidence of the splitting of the moon being sighted? England and India, England and Spain, China and India, India and America. Historical, we have actual written historical evidence of the moon being sighted. Oh no, I think the internet's dropped out. Oh dear. He'll give it a few seconds. If it doesn't connect, we're just going to have to start with the Seerah. Sorry about that, everyone. The answer to that was, anyone? China and India, wrong. Wrong, not India and Spain. Anyone know? England, yes, England. England, not England and Spain though, still wrong. England and India. Remember the 3 monks? There was historical records of 3 monks sighting the moon being split. Oh, we're back. Well, I already gave you the answer. 3 monks who sighted the moon being split, and in India there was a king, King Penumal, who saw the moon being split, heard of a prophet, and actually came and accepted Islam, and died in Yemen on his way back. He gave the Prophet and the Sahaba pickled mango. England and India, oh dear, there's only one, but I guess it's because the internet dropped out as well. So we'll disregard that one. What incident caused the rumor that Meccans had become Muslim? Everyone at the Kaaba did tawaf, everyone at the Kaaba prostrated, everyone at the Kaaba said the Shahada, everyone at the Kaaba said Ameen. Which incident happened at the Kaaba that made people think that the Meccans all had accepted Islam? Everyone at the Kaaba prostrated. Yes, good job. That one most people got right. Everyone at the Kaaba prostrated. So this What was the name of the king ruling Abyssinia at the time of the Muslims? At the time the Muslims sought refuge there. What was the name of the king ruling Abyssinia? Najashi, Negus, Ashama, Abraha. The name of the king ruling Abyssinia. Negashi, Negus, Ashama, or Abraha? Guys, it's a trick question. Negus and Negashi are the Abyssinian names for king. King. I'm actually asking for the king's name, and the king's name was Ashama. Historically, most scholars accept that it was Ashama at the time. So remember, Negus is not his name. Negus just means king. Like Firaun. Firaun means pharaoh. It's not his name. I always try to throw a trick question in here, by the way, so be aware. Which Sahaba became a Sahaba because of Negus, because of the Abyssinian king? Which Sahaba became a Sahaba because of Negus? Amr ibn al-As, Jafar ibn Abu Talib, Abu Bakr, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. Which Sahaba became a Sahaba because of Negus? Yes, Amr ibn al-As. Remember I said there was a riddle? Can anyone answer? Which Sahaba became a Sahaba thanks to a Tabi'in? Only one incident where a Sahaba became a Muslim because of a Tabi'in. And this was Amr ibn al-As. Because Amr ibn al-As became a Muslim thanks to Negus, but Negus never met the Prophet ﷺ. He met a Sahaba. It's an interesting cyclic situation, but that's a trick question. And I think we've got the last one. What did Negus use to trick the Abyssinians into thinking he was still a Christian? Soldiers, piece of paper, sword, his authority. And we might have lost the internet again. What did Negus use to trick the Abyssinians into thinking he was still a Christian? Yeah, we dropped out. Okay, I'll tell you the answer. Anyone guess? Piece of paper. Remember, he put it in his chest and he said, and in this I believe. Okay. I don't know. It'll figure itself out when the internet jumps back and we'll continue. Okay. And you don't have the slides either, do you? Does it work? No. Slides are out as well. Oh, not our day. All right, never mind. So we've got a couple of things to cover this week. If you like history, and if you like understanding the relationships and the powers and who's in charge of who and all that, you're going to like this week. If that's not your cup of tea, I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. A lot of the times during the Seerah, I have touched on the clans of the Quraysh and talked about them. There's a reason, because a lot of things happen because of the clan they were part of, or the history of the clan, or the alliances of those clans. It was a very tribal society, very different to what we're used to. It's a bit hard for us in this society to get our head around. So really quickly, what I'd like to do is go through the different clans of the Quraysh. Unfortunately, we don't have the internet, so I can't show you the nice slides we had. During the Prophet ﷺ's time, there was a change that was happening in the society. Previous to the Prophet ﷺ and previous to Islam, clans were everything. You stuck by your clan, regardless of what the clan said or what you personally believed, you stuck by it. But there was a change occurring, which was that people were acting contrary to what their clan was doing. Any examples? Anyone guess an example? Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab was against Islam and was fighting the Prophet, but his clan, the Hashim clan, was supporting. Officially, they were supporting the Prophet ﷺ. So that was one thing. But there was another thing. Clans were starting to make decisions based on money, which didn't happen when they were Bedouins living in Arabia. But now, it's a fairly recent thing. The clans were settling in Mecca, so they were urbanizing. And when they started urbanizing, money became more important than loyalty to the clan. So for example, the Makhzums and the Abd Shams, the two biggest tribes, they wanted to keep the status quo. They were the conservatives of Quraysh. They didn't want anything changing because they'd lose money. So we'll go really quickly through the... Oh, good. How do I get this back up? I'll just stop for a second. Who is it? Makapaka. I don't know who Makapaka is, but good job. Okay, so let's see if the slides work now. Can you see? Where do I go? Slide, file, design, slideshow, from beginning. No, why not? Screen. How's that? No. All right, give me a second. No. Oh yeah, good. Good. From the beginning. All right. So this slide, I really like this slide because it gives you an idea of the clans amongst the Quraysh and how it's divided. Remember I said that the clans very early on is divided into two areas, the centered ones and the confederates. And this shows you who was with the confederates, who were with the centered ones, and who was supporting the Prophet ﷺ and who was not. So we'll try coming back to that every now and then. But I'm going to talk to you a bit about the Hashim clan. Now the Hashim clan was the Prophet ﷺ's clan. The Prophet ﷺ was part from the Hashim. Most of the close family members of the Prophet ﷺ supported the Prophet, and a lot of them did become Muslim. But his extended family didn't. Abu Lahab was a famous one, but there was another one I talked about. He was Abu Sufyan ibn al-Harith. Abu Sufyan ibn Harith was the Prophet ﷺ's close childhood friend, was a cousin of him, and was his foster brother. And so they were very close, but unfortunately, Abu Sufyan did not become a Muslim for a very long time and actually opposed the Prophet ﷺ. And it was one of those relationships that really gave him a lot of pain and sadness, seeing that person not accept Islam. When we go through this week, you will see a lot of people, we'll come across a lot of people who are so close to some of the greatest Sahaba or even to the Prophet ﷺ, but never accepted Islam. And it's a good lesson for us, I think, sometimes that, you can't control even the closest people to you. They make their own decisions. In regards to the difficulty and the pain the Prophet ﷺ was facing in regards to Abu Sufyan and the sadness, Al-Qasas was revealed. And Al-Qasas goes like this. You'll never be able to guide all those whom you love. Though God guides whomever He wants, He knows better who it is that accepts guidance. So that's the message, because the Prophet ﷺ was very sad about Abu Sufyan. That message came down saying, it's not for you to guide. You can do all the groundwork, you can help. And I guess it's a really good lesson for parents who worry about their kids, especially in this society, but also for kids who sometimes worry about their parents. And when they're not doing what they're supposed to do, you can only do the best you can, and you can only lay the groundwork. The rest is in Allah's hands. And if that was the case for the Prophet, and we'll see the Sahaba as well, we can't really think of us as very special. And I think another thing which is really good to think about is sometimes you see people who are supposed to be Muslims and they're not behaving the way Muslims are. We automatically say, oh, the parents' fault. The parents must have done something. Or why didn't the grandparents or the family? Sometimes it's beyond that. And they are the way they are because Allah willed it. Here's another really good example. Abu Talib's eldest son, Talib and Aqil, had not accepted Islam yet. Whereas their younger one, Jafar, had. Aqil and Talib had not accepted Islam. Around this time, Uthman also marries Ruqayya and then becomes part of the Hashim clan. Well, gets marital bonds with the Hashim clan. Many of the Prophet ﷺ's aunts and nephews accept Islam. Now the next clan, so we have the Hashim, we started the Hashim, the next clan were the Muttalibs. The Muttalibs were a close ally to the Hashim, but they're a very poor clan. They were very poor and they depended on the Hashim for political and financial assistance. Ubayd ibn al-Harith and Mista ibn Utna, these were two Sahabas who were from the Muttalib clan. The Asad clan. The Asad clan, I've got a slide for the Asad clan because Khadija radiallahu anha, was from the Asad clan. The Asad clan recently had power. Before they were quite weak, but recently they had come to power, and they were allied with the powerful Banu Makhzum and the Abd Shams. Khadija's brother, Nawfal, remained an enemy of the Prophet ﷺ. We're not talking about Nawfal ibn Warqa ibn Nawfal, can't remember now. We're not talking about him. That was Khadija's cousin. He had probably by this time passed away. But this was a different half-brother, Nawfal. But Nawfal's son, Aswad, had become Muslim. Khadija's favorite nephew and son-in-law hadn't accepted Islam, but he had also refused to divorce the Prophet ﷺ's daughter, Zainab, despite pressure from the Quraysh. And there was also two other nephews of Khadija that loved Khadija and remained affectionate, but would not accept Islam. It's very interesting because for me, before I started studying the Seerah, for me, I always assumed black and white. People became Muslim, their entire family became Muslim, and then there were the bad guys. But it wasn't. This gives you a picture that the people who didn't become Muslims still supported the Muslims and loved the Muslims. And some people didn't, and they were very closely related to the Prophet. It was a mixed bag, and therefore there was a lot of emotional attachments and a lot of emotional hardship that these people were feeling because of Islam coming and changing society. Another clan was the Zurah tribe. Anyone guess who was a famous person from the Zurah tribe? I mentioned this in the first week, I think. First week? No, not the first week, second week. Second or third week. Zurah tribe. Very famous person. Not alive now. There's a clue. She is not alive now. At this time, we're talking about the Seerah. The Prophet's mother, Amina, was from the Zurah tribe. So Amina was from the Zurah tribe. That was a fairly powerful tribe. They were more powerful than the Hashim and Muttalibs and the Taim. We will talk about Taim in a second, but not as powerful as the Makhzums and the Abd Shams. The two big ones were Makhzum and Abd Shams. Those were the big, powerful clans. Notable converts from the Zurah were Abdurrahman ibn Auf. He was 30 years old when he became a Muslim, and Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. He was in his late teens when he became a Muslim. I'll try to get through these quickly, but there is a reason, there is purpose, because by telling you the clans and the clan relationships, you get an idea of who the Sahaba was and why they did what they did. The next one was the Taim. Abu Bakr was from this clan, the Taim clan. Abu Bakr and also Talha ibn Ubaidullah was from these clans. Most of Abu Bakr's family became Muslim. Most. But sadly, and this is a relationship I always found was quite sad, especially for Abu Bakr. One of his elder sons, so Abu Bakr married Ruman, you can see there. Ruman had two kids, Abdul Kaaba and Aisha. Aisha later married the Prophet ﷺ. Aisha's full brother, Abdul al-Kaaba, did not accept Islam. Not only did he not accept Islam, he fought in the Battle of Uhud. He fought against the Muslims in the Battle of Uhud. So can you imagine the pain that Abu Bakr would have felt? So for the parents here who get hurt by the actions of your kids, it's nothing new. This is history, and the Sahabas went through this immensely. And can you imagine Aisha, who was married to the Prophet, her own brother is not, well, at this time she's not married to the Prophet, but later her own brother for a very long time didn't. He later did accept Islam after the conquest of Mecca. He didn't accept Islam till the conquest of Mecca happened. Abu Bakr's son, Abdul Kaaba. He then changed, I think his name was changed later to Abdul Rahman. I might be wrong, I'll double check that. But Abu Bakr's own son did not accept Islam until the conquest of Mecca. Now, the Makhzums, they were the big guys. They were the top guns. They were wealthy. They were the most powerful clan. And because of their power, they easily opposed any change to status quo. These guys were the ultra-conservatives. They didn't support Hashim remember way back with Abdul Dar being in leadership in the Hashim Tipkalva, talked about this in the first week. They didn't support that. They didn't support the Pact of Chivalry, and they definitely did not support Islam. They wanted things the way it was because the way it was good for them, gave them money, gave them power. One of the greatest enemies of Islam and the Prophet ﷺ was from this tribe. Anyone know who he is? Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl was from the Makhzum tribe. And his arrogance and his outright attacks could probably be because he knew he had the backing of the most powerful clan. Now, Abu Jahl tortured weaker Muslims of his own clan. People like Yasir ibn Ammar and Sumayya, the first martyr of Islam. He tortured her to death. He literally killed her. Abu Jahl killed, and she was from his own clan. But the thing was, young Makhzumites, I call them Makhzum, I don't even know if that's the name, but young Makhzumites, they did accept Islam. People like Abu Salma, Salma, can you see Salma? Down there, became the Prophet's sixth wife after Abu Salma passed away. And Maimuna, right at the top, became the Prophet's 11th wife. And there was another very important person from the Makhzum tribe. This person becoming Muslim really shook the clan up. His name was Akrama ibn Abdi Manaf. The reason why was Akrama was very wealthy. Even from the wealthiest clan, he was one of the wealthiest. He was so rich, and when he accepted Islam, that really shook the Quraysh up. Now, Akrama had a big house near Mount Safa, and he converted the house into the first musalla. So it was Akrama's house that was the first musalla ever, where the Muslims would gather and they would pray there. That's usually a question that comes up in any Islamic quiz, by the way. If you go to camps, at whose house did the first musalla made? Next tribe, Saham, another powerful tribe, but few notables that supported or opposed the Prophet ﷺ, except for someone we talked about last week. Famous Sahaba, last week we talked about. Anyone? He came from this tribe of Saham. No, last week. What? Main character of last week. One of the main characters from last week. Amr ibn Las. He was from the Saham tribe. And there was another Sahaba by the name of Kunais ibn Hudayfa who immigrated to Abyssinia. After returning, he marries Hafsa, the daughter of Omar. And 1 year after, I think a year after Badr, he dies and the Prophet also marries Hafsa. So that's links there with the Saham tribe. The Amir tribe, one of the most stubborn enemies of Islam. The chief of the Amir, Suhail ibn Amr al-Amri, was so infuriated by the conversion of nearly all his children. So nearly all his children became Muslim and nearly all his siblings became Muslim. But he was so angry about that he opposed Islam even stronger. He signed the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, we'll cover in a while. And he wouldn't accept Islam even after the conquest. He only accepted Islam after the Battle of Hunain, and he saw the generosity of the Prophet ﷺ, where the Prophet ﷺ gave him a large portion of the spoils of that war. Then he accepted Islam. He held out till almost pretty much the last. Suhail's brother Sakran was one of the people who emigrated to Abyssinia as a Muslim, and he died shortly after returning to Mecca. His widow, Sauda, became the second wife of the Prophet ﷺ. After Khadija passed away, he married after a little while, and that was Sauda. Abdu Shams, second in power. So next is Banu Makhzum. Abdu Shams was the most powerful. Strongly opposed the Prophet again, and people like Utbah, Shaiba, Abu Sufyan, and Hind were from Abdu Shams. You'll hear about these people. And the reason I'm telling you now is kind of an introduction, because these guys are going to come very strongly in the Prophet ﷺ's life. Abu Sufyan and Hind were very upset because a lot of their children became Muslim. Abdu Shams' brother Hashim. Okay, here's a little interesting side note, by the way. Abdu Shams, who the clan is named after, was the brother of Hashim. Now, Abdu Shams had a son, Umayyah. Can anyone guess why this name is important? Umayyah. If you look at the slide, you'll get a clue. Umayyah. The Umayyads, after the Rashidun Khilafah, came from that name Umayyah. So that clan became the Umayyads, the powerful Umayyads. The Abdu Shams. All right, Adi, another powerful tribe. Umar's clan. So Umar was from the clan of Adi. Now Umar, if you see there, you can see his sister, we'll touch on that very soon, his sister was Muslim and all his in-laws were Muslim as well. The Jumma was another tribe, not very powerful but very influential. And Uthman ibn Mazun was an early convert from the Jumma tribe. But many of the strongest enemies of the Prophet ﷺ were also from this tribe. Umayyah ibn Khalaf. That name ring a bell? Umayyah ibn Khalaf. He was from the Jumma tribe. He was the one who owned Bilal and tortured Bilal. It's also about Umayyah ibn Khalaf that verses 1 to 6 of Surah Al-Humaza came. And also Abu Bakr frees a lot of the slaves, one of which is a person by the name of Amir ibn Furaya. Now I want to talk a little bit, just briefly, about Amir ibn Furaya, if I can find the page. All right, so Abu Bakr frees a Sahaba by the name of Amir ibn Furaya as a shepherd. Several years later, Amir will use his flocks to cover the Prophet and Abu Bakr's tracks as they escape to Mecca under the cover of night. After Uhud, the Prophet will send Amir with a delegation of 40 men to teach Islam to the Hawazin clan of Amir. Along the way, the party is ambushed and massacred. When Amir's body is not found among the dead, the Prophet later confirms that Amir has been lifted up to heaven. This was the slave that Abu Bakr freed. So he went from that state to a person his body was lifted up to heaven. I found that very interesting, that story. Now, also from the Jumma tribe was Umayyah ibn Khalaf's brother, Ubay. He was the guy who took a bone, crumbled it, and blew it in the Prophet's face and said, do you think Allah can bring this back to life as well? And in relation to that, verses 77 to 81 of Surah Yasin is revealed. So it's in relation to that guy. 3 other smaller tribes, Harith, Ibn Abdul Dar, and Nawfal. These were lesser clans. They didn't really make an impact on Islam. They didn't oppose it greatly or support it greatly. But just a side note, Abdul Dar used to be the tribe that was in power when Hashim took over. They still held the keys of the Kaaba. And all 3 had a historical rivalry with Hashim. Notable Muslims were Musayb ibn Umari from Abdul Dar and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jar from Harith. These names you're not going to remember, and it's not expected, but you're going to, as you hear khutbahs and things, these names will be given. You know, this hadith was from blah, blah, blah. I hope then you can make a bit of a quick connection. Now, that's all the clans. I know it's a bit dry, but there is a reason for you to understand the clans and the clan structure. We are now getting into year 6 of Islam. Islam's been revealed now 6 years on. And one day the Prophet ﷺ comes to the Kaaba. And as he's at the Kaaba, as usual, several Meccan leaders start insulting him, slandering him. Usually the Prophet ﷺ does not say anything. Usually he walks away. But this day something happens. Scholars say it might have been a premonition to what the Muslims were, the change that was going to happen with the Muslims. Up till this point, the Muslims were told, do not retaliate, just bear in patience. Right? Not up till this point, even after this point, but things are starting to change. And how we know it is the first incident. The Prophet ﷺ suddenly stops what he does. He suddenly stops, looks up at the Meccans, and he says, O people of Quraysh, listen, I swear by Allah in whose hand is my soul, that you will one day be slaughtered to pieces. And there is pin drop silence. This is in the Kaaba. You know, you've been to the Kaaba, it's always noise, pin drop. People are so shocked because they are not used to the Prophet ﷺ responding that way. They're so shocked that Abu Jahl finally manages to speak up and he says, you can leave Abu Qasim, for you have never been foolish. What he means is, okay, you've had your say, you should go now. It scared them so much. It's interesting that even though they denied the Prophet, when the Prophet stood up and said something, it shocked them. And it sent a shockwave amongst all of them. The other interesting thing is, this gives you an idea of the character of Abu Jahl. He's a stereotypical bully. When you stand up to him, he backs down, and there's more examples of him. He thinks he's all big shot, but as soon as you stand up to him, he becomes like butter. And one example is what we're going to cover now. Now another day, the Prophet ﷺ had come to the Kaaba, and Abu Jahl and his friends started mocking the Prophet ﷺ. They mocked him so severely and so disgracefully that even the people there were feeling ashamed. One such witness saw this, and she hung around the gates of the Kaaba, and the Prophet ﷺ didn't say anything this time. He didn't say anything, he walked back home. And while this witness was hanging around the gates, someone comes in after a hunting expedition. Who was this person? Hamza. Hamza comes in with his bow on his shoulder. He'd just gone hunting. Little bit about Hamza. Big guy, very muscular, very strong, one of the best swordsmen in Quraysh. Everyone was scared of him. So he strolled in. He hadn't accepted Islam yet, but he loved the Prophet ﷺ. He was very close to the Prophet ﷺ. He strolls in, and this witness goes up to him and says, do you know what Abu Jahl did to your kin, to your family member? And starts telling all the insults. Hamza gets infuriated. He walks straight up to Abu Jahl, takes his bow and swings it and smacks Abu Jahl across the face. He falls down, and all the Quraysh that were there suddenly get up and they don't know what to do. Should they retaliate? They're scared. Hamza's huge. He's usually twice the size of everyone there. And Hamza says, you abused Muhammad? Well, no, I too follow his religion and profess what he preaches. Pretty much bring it on. What are you going to do now? You insulted my family member because he believed in something. Well, I believe that too, so what are you going to do? And Abu Jahl, again, backs down. He says, I'm sorry, I went too far. I shouldn't have said those things. And he tells everyone, let's just leave. Perhaps good reminders on sometimes how you have to behave with bullies. Now, this is the first time the Muslims really get some muscle. Previously, there were a lot of Muslims, and they had people like Akrama who had money. But with Hamza becoming a Muslim, there was some real muscle that backed the Muslims up this time. And it was a big victory, and there was a lot of Muslims who rejoiced in this. Shortly after, another big incident happens, and the muscle doubles. Anyone know what happens? Omar. I'll cover Omar very soon. Now, another big and strong muscular man, Omar ibn al-Khattab, he was the nephew of Abu Jahl. He was actually quite close to Abu Jahl as well. He, for a very, very, very long time, was a strong opponent of the Prophet ﷺ. He would whip Muslims. He would torture Muslims. The interesting thing is, generally, most of the enemies of the Prophet ﷺ and Islam were the older generation, the Prophet's parents' generation, some from his generation. Generally, most of the younger people supported. Omar was the exception. He was young, and he was very powerful, and he hated Islam, and he hated the Prophet ﷺ at this time. So much so that it was working on his mind, to the point that he was almost going mad. He was trying to find a way to destroy it. He was seeing Islam, unlike Abu Jahl and other people who hated Islam because they felt their personal power going, or they felt their personal clan was being embarrassed, or their trade was getting disrupted. For Omar, it was about honor. Omar was like, the honor of the Quraysh is getting destroyed. I have to stand up and defend the Quraysh. The other thing with Omar is that unlike the Meccans, the Quran was actually making an impact on him. There were several instances where he shook. His heart shook when he heard the Quran. But he dismissed it, and he said the Prophet ﷺ, he's just a poet. Now one day he's sitting and he's thinking, what do I do? What can I do to fix this situation? Remember, at this time, the whole thing, all of Mecca was about Islam. The talk was about Islam and the Prophet. He's thinking, what do I do? And he comes up with a decision. He thinks the only way to get rid of this problem known as Islam is to cut off the head of it, literally and figuratively. He says, I am going to go and kill the Prophet. Now, question, why hadn't anyone else done this before? Correct. No one else had the guts to do that because that person would 100% die, and there would be a massive war. So everyone else was thinking about their life. Omar said, I don't care about my life. I'm going to do this amazing noble act. I'm going to be a martyr for the Quraysh. I'm going to kill the Prophet. They can kill me afterwards if they want. So he gets a sword and he goes towards the Prophet ﷺ's house. Big man. Now the other thing with Omar I want to say is he was huge. They say that when Omar is sitting and there's people standing, he looks like he's standing. And when he's riding a horse, his feet would drag on the ground. He was that big, huge man. I think he was bigger than Hamza as well. So when he has a sword and he's storming towards the Prophet ﷺ, you can imagine he's drawing a lot of attention. Everyone's like, where is this guy going? Because whoever he's going for is dead. One such person was a person by the name of Nuaym ibn Abdullah. Nuaym sees him charging with a sword, turning red, furious, and Nuaym says, "Oh Omar, where are you going?" And Omar says, "I am going to kill the Prophet. To end this trouble that has troubled Mecca for 6 years, I'm going to finish it once and for all today." What Omar didn't know was Nuaym was a secret Muslim. He had accepted Islam, but he hadn't told anyone. So Nuaym has to think fast. So Nuaym says, "Oh Omar, why don't you fix the problem in your own family before you go and kill the Prophet?" And Omar says, "What are you talking about?" And Nuaym says, your sister, she is Muslim. Don't you know that? Go fix that problem." When I heard this story first, I'm thinking, maybe Nuaym could have come up with something better because you've just now thrown someone else in front of the Prophet. But we'll see how it turns out. So Omar says, "What? My sister?" He's like, "Yeah, your sister and your brother-in-law, your sister's husband, are Muslims. Didn't you know? You should go to them and talk to them." He immediately turns his direction and he storms off with his sword to his sister Fatima's house. Nuaym, in the meantime, runs off to the Prophet to warn him. Now, Omar is approaching Fatima's house and he then hears Quran being recited. A Sahaba by the name of Khabab used to go and recite Quran to Fatima and her husband Said. So at this time, it just so happened that when Omar is coming, Khabab was at their house. And he was reciting, and Omar hears this, and he is even more furious. And he starts banging on the door. As he's banging on the door, demanding it be open, Fatima takes the manuscript, we'll call it the manuscript that Khabab was reading, and hides it under her skirt. And Khabab goes and hides in a corner. Omar barges in, smashes the door down, barges in, and he starts saying, "What were you saying? What was that gibberish?" And Syed and Fatima are like, "I don't know what you're talking about. We were just talking." And he's like, "No, you were saying something. Tell me the truth." And they keep saying, "We don't know what you're talking about." And Omar grabs Syed, tackles him to the ground, and starts beating him. Fatima, trying to protect her husband, jumps in, and Omar turns around and hits Fatima. Fatima is hit on the chin, and she's bleeding. That knocks some sense into Omar. He was in a rage, but seeing his sister bleed, suddenly he realizes, he's gone too far. Something's wrong here. And Fatima looks at his brother, and he says, "We are Muslims, and we believe in the Prophet ﷺ, and even if you kill us, that's what we are." And immediately, the rage that Omar has slips out of him. It just slips out of him, and he kind of calms down. And you've seen this. You've seen with people who go into such wild rages and then suddenly switches off. And he tells Fatima, he says gently, show me what it is that Muhammad has brought you. Like, what is it that he's brought you that makes you stand up to me like this? What is it that is changing everyone? What is it that is causing all of the Quraysh to go crazy? Show it to me. Before this time, he didn't want to show it. He's just like he was against it. You know, the saying, try before you buy. He didn't try it. He didn't want to listen to it. He's heard it, but he always dismissed it. This time, he's saying, well, there's something special here. Let me see it then, at least. And Fatima takes the manuscript out, and Omar says, give it to me. And Fatima says, no, you're going to destroy it. I'm not going to give it to you. And Omar says, no, I promise I will not do anything to it. And Fatima says, you know what Fatima says? Anyone? He says, Omar, you are impure. You tortured Muslims. You've been bad to Muslims. You're impure. I cannot give the word of Allah to your hands. Go get cleaned. Go wash yourself. So Omar goes and washes himself, comes back, and the manuscript is given. And on the manuscript is which surah? Surah Taha. Surah Taha was the thing that changed Omar. If you go home and read Surah Taha, you'll see why it shook him so much. He reads Surah Taha, and he says, how beautiful, how noble are these words. And Khabab, who had been hiding all this time, steps up and says, O Omar, I hope that Allah has chosen you, because I heard the Prophet ﷺ say, O Allah, guide either Omar ibn al-Khattab or who's the other? Omar ibn al-Sham. Guide one of the two Omars to Islam. And Khabbab says, I hope that was you. You could be that person. And Omar says, where's the Prophet ﷺ? And Khabbab says, he is at Akrama's house, the Musalla, Akrama's. So he goes to Akrama's house, but he forgets something. He forgets to drop the sword. So he's still holding onto the sword, and he's going to Akrama's house. And he knocks on the door of Akrama, and the Muslims there are panicking, because they've seen that Omar's outside with the sword. And they knew, because Nuaym had told them. But because Nuaym had told them, Hamza was there. Hamza had come as a bodyguard to the Prophet ﷺ. And Hamza says, Ya Rasulullah, let him come in. If he comes with goodwill, good intentions, we will give him a wealth of goodness. If he comes with bad intentions, I will take his own sword and kill him. So you can, it didn't happen, but I thought, probably wrong of me to think, but I thought, how awesome a fight would that have been? These two giants, it would have been chaos. So they let Omar in, and the Prophet ﷺ asks Omar, why have you come? And Omar says, I have come to declare my faith in Allah and His Messenger and what He has brought. The Prophet ﷺ said such a loud takbir, he said, Allahu Akbar, so loudly, and this is unlike the Prophet ﷺ. He doesn't do that. But this time he said it so loud that every man and woman in that house heard it and knew immediately what happened. Even people outside heard it. It's very unique because I have not come across anywhere where the Prophet ﷺ was loud. He was a very gentle person, he was a very quiet person, except in this incident. He made such a big Allahu Akbar that everyone heard it and they immediately knew that Omar had become Muslim. And the whole house was rejoicing. Now, Omar being Omar did something else. If I can find it. Anyone know what Omar did straight after this? Now, most people would say this Shahada, they'll stay with the Prophet or they'll go home or something. You know what Omar did? So I'll read from his own words. When I entered Islam that night, I thought to myself, which of the people in Mecca is the most violent and against God's messenger, that I might go to him and tell him what I have become Muslim. He really likes to dig into people. My answer was Abu Jahl, his uncle. He's like, okay, he actually thought about this. He actually sat down and thought, who can I annoy the most? So the next morning, I went and knocked at the door, and Abu Jahl came out and said, the best welcomes to my sister's son. What has brought you here? You could see the smirk on Omar's face. I love Omar. I love him because he's got this funny character. He goes wild, but then he also likes to play jokes, and he doesn't care. Why would he? He's twice the size of any man. Who's going to stand a fight with him? And he says, I answered, I came to tell you that I believe in Allah and His Messenger Muhammad, and I testified to the truth that which He has brought. You can imagine the face, Abu Jahl's face at this time, how his jaw would have dropped. And after a while of shock, Abu Jahl says, May God's curse be on you, and may He curse the tidings you have brought. And then slams the door. And then probably, I assume, Omar went back very happy with a big smile on his face. Inshallah, we'll stop there to give you guys some time to get wudu. Thank you for coming, and inshallah, we'll continue with the Seerah next week. Just to remind you as well, we do start at 6:15, so we do the quiz at 6:15, and then the quiz will go around from 6:15 to 6:30, so try to come at that time not to miss it. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.